This is Chapter 1, Review of Systems Approach to Food Service Organization. So what does a system mean? Well, there are a lot of different contexts when we talk about systems. We can think of the solar system or the defense system, transportation or school systems, or even the human body as a system. In its truest form, it's a set of interdependent parts that work together to achieve a common goal. There has been an evolution in the workplace of different systems. So the traditional theory, this was back in the early 20th century, individuals were trained to perform a task in one best way, and if everyone performed it efficiently, the goals were reached. There were some issues with this, as you could probably imagine. There was some customer or employee satisfaction, productivity, maybe that one best way wasn't the true productive way or efficient way. So it did cause some issues. Then they moved on to the management theory, which focused more on quantitative methods. It added some technology, some data, and math models to help become more efficient. And then a combination of those created the systems theory, which emphasizes on the organization relationship within or with the environment. So there are assumptions that performance can improve by aligning the mission of the company with environmental constraints and/or demands. So a little bit more about the systems concept. A system is defined, as mentioned, as a collection of interrelated parts or subsystems unified by design to obtain one or more objectives. The following are different fundamental implications of the term system and really defines that overall term. So a system is designed to accomplish an objective. In food service, this objective would be to provide meals at a competitive price. Subsystems of a system have an established arrangement to accomplish the goal or objective of a larger organization. There are interrelationships that exist among the elements, and the flow of resources through a system is more important than basic raw materials. The raw materials being the ingredients, equipment, labor, the skill that all works together to create the final outcome, which is the meal or food items. Organization objectives are more important than those objective goals of a smaller subsystem that make up that organization. So the goals of the receiving department would be important for that department's success, but would not be a goal listed for the organization as a whole. As an example, an objective or goal for the organization as a whole is to increase sales of meals by 5% over the next quarter, whereas the receiving department may have a goal to have all refrigerated and frozen goods put away within 30 minutes of receipt. A department goal would not be part of the overall objectives of the larger organization. This is an overview of the food systems model. This is figure 1.4 in your text. The arrows in the model represent the flow of materials, energy, and information throughout the food service system. As you can see, each box provides more detail to specific components within that model. This is a good figure to refer back to throughout the semester. So let's look at it from the beginning, in which most cases it's the inputs. You can see the factor that makes up, different factors that make up the inputs of the system include labor, skills, material, actual facilities, equipment, as well as operational factors like budget, time, information that can be used more to move into the transformational phase. Once the inputs have been transformed, and we will talk about these different functions in future chapters, the subsystems of transformation, such as management functions and how to link the different subsystems together to create the final output, which is meals of the proper quantity, quality, and include the satisfaction of both your internal and external customers, essentially the people who consume your meals. And of course, having the financial accountability is a critical component of outputs as well. Then you also have controls that provide the important factors within that system. Whether it's following the plans or objectives put forth, following the standards or contracts are executed correctly, and that all laws, regulations are followed for safety or sanitation and follow state local or federal regulations. And last is the memory, which provides information to the transformation component, which is any data or records used to help forecast, any financial information that records any changes in budget, and follows personnel information. What's turnover been during a certain period of time? This information is helpful for any food service director to use when making plans for the next year or even the next meal. What happened in the past, what worked well, what didn't work, and what can change is all useful information. So let's talk about different characteristics of an open system, and it's important to understand some terminology we use in food service operations. So interdependency is the reciprocal relationship of a subsystem or parts of a system. Each part mutually affects the performance of others. For example, the purchasing department can have effect on the receiving department by how much is ordered, where it can be stored, and is there enough place to store it. They also impact labor forces. How much do we need to prepare these items? How much staff, what kind of skill level that staff is needed? And once it's prepared, how will it be served and then cooled and stored for future use, if any? All the departments can relate and affect each other in some form or fashion. The result of effective integration or effective interaction is integration, in which all the parts of the system share objectives of the entire organization. Integration leads to synergy, meaning that the units or parts of an organization working together may have greater impact than each of them operating separately. Dynamic equilibrium is a term that means there is constant response and adaptation of the system based on the environment, either internal or external environment. Internal would be things like the budget, staffing, resources, equipment. An external environment would mean things such as the price of goods in the marketplace, the state of the economy, or even such things as regulation changes. Dynamic equilibrium is also known as the steady state or the continuous response and adaptation of a system to what's taking place to its internal and external environment. This happens in a lot of different industries, and food service is definitely one of them. The term equifinality is applied to organizations as a system. It means that a same or similar output could be achieved by using different inputs, or the inputs are changed by a varying of transformation processes. Let's just give an example. Let's say lasagna is made, and we typically make it from scratch. All the ingredients of the lasagna are purchased: noodles, garlic, tomatoes, etc. all by them individually, and then the chef assembles or transforms the ingredients to make the finished lasagna. Let's say the restaurant loses that chef, and you no longer have anyone who's skilled to make the item from scratch. And maybe there are changes to the budget as well, so the food service director decides to buy an already made lasagna that's frozen and just needs to be heated up. Less skilled labor is needed to heat up that lasagna versus following a recipe and making it from scratch. So you have the same output, which is the lasagna, but the inputs, ingredients versus ready prepared, and the transformation of these items is different. Same end, different means to get there. In other words, various alternatives may be used to obtain similar results. Then we have permeability of boundaries, and this is pretty self-explanatory. It means each of the subsystems have boundaries, but interaction is required for the larger organization to operate efficiently. Purchasing communicates with inventory, the chef communicates with the manager about the menu so the right staff is available to make the items, and the budget is appropriate for the items on the menu. Everyone needs to interact outside their own department or scope of responsibilities to ensure that they can get done what they are assigned to do. Remember, in food service, each area affects and depends on one another for the goals of that business to be achieved. Interface is known as the area of interdependency between two subsystems or two systems. So you as a part of the restaurant organization have interaction with not only different departments within your business, but also outside environments such as suppliers, wholesalers, government agencies, etc., that may dictate certain guidelines and labor unions. And a hierarchy does exist in most businesses and shows the subsystems of lower order. Most food service organizations that fail do so because they don't have a good strategic management process in place that allows them to analyze their progress to meeting their goals and staying competitive. Most new food service operations don't create a clear mission or vision in place and put it in place, which allows the objectives to be muddled. So there's really no solid idea or clear plan. So having a good strategic plan in place allows continuous analysis of company's mission, values, objectives, and ensures that they are continually being met and are worked on in each subsystem. It does require evaluation at every step along the way, and changes are made to management, staffing, budgets, and so forth when the overall goals and objectives are not being met. In large companies, you see this when they start laying off or hiring more individuals. At that time, they may find they have too much staff or too little staff to achieve their sales goals. At that point, steps are made to correct the issue to hopefully improve the bottom line. If this is not done, you could end up with, say, too much staff and paying wages. The paying wages end up costing way more than your business is making. On the other hand, not enough staff, you're losing potential business and growth opportunities where your business could be making money if you had more staff to make it happen. So let's talk a little bit about environmental threats. Food service directors have to understand to remain viable in their business, they have to maintain a competitive edge or environment or advantage. So there are a variety of different threats to consider. This requires them to evaluate, this could be examining food service operations that directly compete with their own business, or looking at the quality and price of products that are provided by their supplier, and if there could be any substitutes that could be purchased that could reduce overhead costs but not reduce quality. And looking at demographics of their buyers as well. Looking at all the threats allows the food service director to plan accordingly and appropriately to meet goals and objectives in place, which would be serving the highest quality meals and a great place to remain competitive in the market. This is a challenge to do, and the threats are ever changing, and always there are lots of threats in any type of food service operation, from big to small. As mentioned, many organizations will fail because they don't have a focus of objectives in place. During the strategic management process, the food service directors and upper management are involved in determining the strategic direction for the company. And this creation and implementation of strategies will help the company gain a competitive edge. There are three bases for strategies from which they have decided they will operate from. First is cost leadership, being the lowest cost provider of a product service for a broad target market. So an example, I'm going to make sandwiches and I'm going to make them at the cheapest and best I can make them for lunch service on a college campus. Then there's differentiation. This provides a product or service that is unique, that a customer values, and that the customers are willing to pay for at a higher price. So in this instance, maybe I'm going to provide gluten-free and organic lunch items that may cost me more, but I know that some customers may be willing to pay a bit more due to the fact it's organic or gluten-free, which is harder to find on a college campus during lunch. And last is focus. This is using a cost, leadership, or differentiation strategy to target a specific, limited size market niche. This could be either to make it the cheapest or most unique, but you're going to target a very specific audience. Say prepackaged meals that are organic and wholesome for students at an elementary school. This is a very specific market, and in this instance, it may be more differentiation strategy, as it may not be the cheapest prepackaged meal, but it holds a certain value to the parents who are paying for these meals due to its nutrition integrity and convenience for themselves and their child. All right, let's talk about the two different types of food service industries. And we're going to talk about these throughout the semester as well. So there's the commercial segment, which includes selling foods for profit and that's their primary role and activity. This includes things like restaurants and fast food and franchisees. They have a static menu versus a cyclic menu or cycle menu. The on-site, sometimes referred to as non-commercial or institutional, provides food service as a secondary activity for the business in which the food service is located. Examples of this could be schools and healthcare institutions, assisted living, and so forth. Making money is not their ultimate objective. We'll give you some more examples in the subsequent slides. So here are some other ones of commercial food service, like limited service or limited menu restaurants, full service restaurants, airports, cruise ships, zoos, museums, sporting events, and convenience stores. Each one of these, their goal is to make money. These are examples of on-site or institutional, things like hospitals or schools, college and universities, childcare, senior care, military, correctional facilities, and employee feeding. So you don't go to these places specifically for the food, but while you're there, you may want to have something to eat or a meal, and these institutions would provide you those meals. There's a couple different types of operating practices in the food service industry. Traditionally speaking, while most food service operations were considered self-operating, which means the food service operation is managed by an employee of the company in which that food service operation is located, all employees were hired and managed by one single group that owns the business. The manager has full responsibility and authority for all functions within the department and reports to an administrator employed by this same company. Sometimes there are opportunities for partnerships to occur. We sometimes see these in fast food sectors. For example, you may see a rest area off a highway and it has a gas station that partners with a fast food restaurant like McDonald's or Subway. There may be a time when two fast food restaurants share the same building, like you may see in a Taco Bell and a Pizza Hut together. Many businesses and corporations will utilize services of a food service management company, or what's called a contractor. ASU is a perfect example of this. They have a contract with Aramark to provide the students, faculty, and staff with varying food options on all campuses. Many universities, businesses even like hospitals or corporate businesses, will contract with a food management company. The business, like schools for instance, may not have the ability or knowledge or frankly the desire to run a food service operation, but they know they need to provide some kind of food service to their customers, clients, or employees. So they hire companies like Aramark, Sodexo, Southwest Food Service to come in and run their food service for them. The food management company is responsible for hiring and firing of the employees, procuring all the food, making and serving all the meals. For that service, they charge the client, like ASU or the hospital, a set fee per year. Some contracts will set a fee per meal, some will set it as a percentage of meals sold. It just depends on the client and the food service management company and how they determine the contract. Franchising is when a food service concept is introduced and franchising opportunities are in place. One of the first companies that started this was McDonald's. So individuals could purchase the franchising rights to open up their own McDonald's or maybe a Subway. As part of that franchise, you have to agree to sell specific types of menu items and use established recipes for all items so there is consistency from one store to another. Last, in some operations, there's a multi-department, multi-site management to oversee food service operation. There may be several departments in a large organization that come together to run the food service operation. Think about this in a hospital environment where you may have the clinical dietetic staff working very closely with the food service staff to ensure nutrient compliance with meals served or have certain supplements available to their patients. And last, let's talk about sustainability. And the concept of sustainability is becoming more and more important in food service operations. The definition of sustainability is the ability to meet the needs of today without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. And it's becoming more and more important in food service. Within food service systems, it can be broken down into 3 different types of categories. So we think of ecologically sound, socially acceptable, and economically viable. Ecologically sound, inputs used in a way that conserve, regenerate, or enhance natural resources, maybe through the energy utilization. For instance, maybe water is not being wasted and using and purchasing Energy Star equipment, so now they're using low amounts of energy when possible to produce meals. The second branch is the business branch that runs a socially acceptable way, which means the resources are distributed equitably. People working in the food system are treated justly and in a fair way, and foods that are produced are of somehow benefit to their health, are culturally acceptable, as well as being economically and geographically available. And last, the third branch is economically viability, meaning that the operation provides a means that employees can support families, the pay is equitable and fair to the level and quality of the work being provided, there is economic control of production, distribution, and if you think back to the schematic of the food service system from the beginning of this chapter, there are controls in place to help provide oversight to production and distribution.